Welcome to the Links to Messiah podcast, anchoring our New Testament faith in Old Testament traditions. And now, your host, Rachel Kushner.
So this is my friend Donna Duffy, and we have a very long history of our families knowing one another. And what I love most about Donna is her heart for God and her love for Jewish people, which has been almost your whole life. We can talk about that. Donna and her family lived in Haifa when her children were small in Israel. So I want to talk about that too. She has a lot of insight to offer us today. So thank you, Donna, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm honored to be here.
So, well, let's just dig in, Donna. Let's dig in.
All right.
So, as a Jesus believing mom, I want to hear what you think, or why do you think it's important for us to teach our kids about the Old Testament? Why does that matter?
Well, it's interesting because I feel like, first of all, I have this honor of living in Israel on both sides of this situation. So I lived less time on the Jewish side, most of the time on the Arab side. Actually, my children were born in Nazareth.
Oh, your children were born in Nazareth.
Nazareth, yep. Laura was the only child I had. She was up to 6 months old. We lived in Haifa, then we moved to Nazareth, and the rest of their lives overseas was in Nazareth. So Ben and I had the wonderful opportunity to learn both Hebrew and Arabic. And so we had a fuller picture of life in that part of the world. That alone is an eye-opener to the Old Testament.
Yes, absolutely.
Huge eye-opener to the Old Testament. Now, raising kids in Israel means field trip for me could be, we're going to the Sea of Galilee today.
Oh, wow.
In fact, I've got funny stories of like people coming from the States and wanting to see the synagogue where Jesus first read from the scrolls. And then people are having dinner and I'm speaking to them in Arabic. They're like, here's the key. We're eating. Go let them in.
Really?
Yes. And at Capernaum as well. I had people come from far away and they're like, we're closed. I'm like, she came from far away. And I'm speaking to the gatekeeper. And here's the key to the church. You let me go in and take the people in there. So I've had this very wonderful opportunity to climb Masada, to, be in the, float in the Dead Sea, which isn't my favorite thing, to do, to do all of these things and then expose my children to stories, to biblical understanding and just build the corollaries from there. And I think having that full picture, yes, we lived in Nazareth where Jesus lived and Jesus walked in, all of those things. I think there is something to them understanding, especially the Psalms. I think of how many times, Laura, we would use the Psalms to kind of, when she, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Who shall I fear? The Lord is, the light of my life, whom shall be afraid? Like she would know these stories and these verses as well as the New Testament. But I think the whole thing is so essential.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think about Jesus, so many times quoting Old Testament scriptures, speaking of himself.
That's right.
It's incredible. So to have that understanding, like you said, that whole picture from the old to the new and really getting the big picture, not just all the miracles and amazing stories.
Right.
But to understand at such a deeper level.
Yeah. I mean, even Jesus saying, when they say, it's our father's Moses. And he said, if you believed in Moses, you'd believe in me.
That's right.
And then the transfiguration and all of this kind of standing on that Mount of Transfiguration. Wow, what a place. So I feel like if you leave that out, you're clapping with one hand.
That's such a good way to say that.
You know what I mean? Like you can't not that all, it's all one.
Right.
It's all one. So
yeah. Oh, I love that, clapping with one hand. And one of the things that you can speak to living there is that one of the things I love so much about all the Jewish feasts and holidays is that it's this solidifying family experience. We're sitting around the table. We have from infants to grandma and grandpa to aunties and cousins, and everybody is sitting around. And I love that it's just a way to strengthen our families and our children's spiritual foundation. So can
Yeah.
you speak to, like, I know you have those experiences.
So, I loved living in Jerusalem, especially at the High Holy Days. I mean, even though I lived on the Arab side, I would
Yeah.
get myself to down to the Wailing Wall and, um, at Simchat Torah where they're dancing with the scrolls and in
Yeah.
Sukkot and all of those kinds of things. And it's funny because when I was in college, I really people thought that I was Jewish because of all the Judaic I had and all the things that I had.
Sure.
I won the library contest, book contest at Eastern University. I saw that there was this is so it's a little detour. I
I
saw
love
that
it.
there was a book exhibit contest. I'm like, oh, I have a lot of stuff. So I go back to my dorm, throw everything in a box, dump it on the front thing and go to class. I come back and I like double take it. I'm like, there's my Simchat Torah flag, my my
That's
yeah, like
awesome.
all this stuff is sitting in my Joys of Yiddish book, all this kind of thing. And the fact that I would have then, gone to the Middle East and had both the experience of living among Arabs and living among Jewish people
Right.
was beautiful because that whole familial thing
Mhm.
is just a thing. It is on both sides of that culture, very much sitting around the table. But especially in these holidays, you wouldn't think of that being like if you're home alone, like someone's inviting you to the table.
Is
You
that
know what
right?
I mean? Yes, yes. So I feel like one of the things that I think is so helpful is when we integrate our kids into those bigger family settings,
Hmm.
even if we only have a couple of few kids. Like I'm one of 6 kids, so we had every once in a while, I'm like, wow, like 8 people at dinner, like every night.
Every night. Right. That's a lot of cooking.
It's a lot of people.
Mhm.
Um, but I think, I had 3 kids, but still to be in that community place,
Mm.
the place where you see community exhibited, it was probably the hardest thing of me coming back to the US. It's what I shared in my TEDx talk because
Yes.
of that coming back. Like
Yeah.
then there was this like almost void of community.
Mm. Right.
So
We
I
pull
feel like
into our garage, the door closes, and we're in our homes.
that's it.
Very
That's it.
different. Very
Yeah.
different style of living.
Yeah. And everyone just, I could be walking down the street. I remember living in the Tanya and I'm walking down the street and some lady says, do you have a hat? It's super sunny, hot day.
Uh-huh.
No, you don't have a hat. You're such a nice girl. Like you should have a hat. You know what I mean?
You should have a hat, Donna. Why
Where's
don't
your
you have a
hat?
hat?
Why don't you have a hat? I don't have a hat. So
That's awesome.
I
But
feel
that
like
speaks to the generosity and that sense of community that
yes, absolutely. And people feeling like here, I feel like in many ways, there's such a high, like, oh, better not. What if I offend you?
Mm.
There, they'll ask you how much is your house? How much did you pay for that shirt? You paid that for that shirt? I could get you that shirt.
Right,
But
right, right. I could have
nobody,
negotiated a better
yeah, they'll
price.
tell you, wait, did you put some weight on? Like things we would never say. We
Yeah,
would never
very
say.
different culture.
But I feel like there's that openness of generosity, openness of spirit, openness of home
Hmm.
that we had at one time, but
Right.
somehow we've lost that. So
Yeah, things have changed. Right.
yeah.
Well, I want to jump into the high holidays for just a second.
Mhm.
So, just
Mhm.
anybody who's listening, I just want to kind of explain a little bit about the Jewish calendar and how it begins at Rosh Hashanah. That
Mhm.
is our Jewish New Year. So, like I think about as Americans, we count down to midnight. We're celebrating, we're looking forward, we're setting new goals and dreams, but that's what Rosh Hashanah is. And it's in the fall, in September. 10 days later, is the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. And then we come upon Sukkot a few days later. So I want to just take a minute to talk about Sukkot because it really is one of the more joyous
Mhm.
festivals in the Jewish
Mhm.
calendar. We're celebrating an abundant harvest that the Lord's provided. It's known as the Feast of Tabernacles, as you
Bubble.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And during Sukkot, this is what I want to talk to you about, like what you saw in Israel. Jewish families building their sukkahs, the temporary shelter, the hut. So for 7 days, families treat their sukkah like it's their home away from home. It's their dwelling place. And we can read more about that. Jesus celebrated it in John 7. It's in Leviticus 23. But in modern times, Jewish people look at Sukkot as a chance to get outside, live more simply, free ourselves of material possessions. And there's such a focus of appreciation of what's important in life. Tell me your observations and what you experienced during the high holidays.
Most of my time was lived primarily in the Arabic
Right.
sector. But it's funny because I would want to kind of somehow be around some of those things. Like at Pesach, I always made sure that we went and got matzah, and from the Jew, we're on the Arab side, send my husband to go get me some matzah so I can have date spread and all these kinds of things.
I love
really
it.
do it. But the Sukkot holiday, I think you would see like tall buildings, apartment buildings. The only thing they really have is outside is their balcony.
Mm-hmm.
And the balconies would either have a sukkah on it,
Okay.
or they would have for the building a sukkah.
Oh, like a community
A
sukkah.
community one. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Oh, that must have been fun to see. Like, I know I've seen in Brooklyn, like on the fire escapes.
Oh yeah, they're all over the
sukkahs.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really very cool.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, let's just dig in a little bit about, so we have this temporary dwelling during Sukkot. So I want to get your feedback and thoughts, feelings, opinions on how does that relate to Jesus's earthly life and his ministry and what he did here on earth.
Well, it comes to me as you're talking too that, just this temporary dwelling, like we have this light and this treasure in a jar of clay. This is a temporary dwelling, and our permanent Shabbat and our permanent rest is not, it's like the now and the not yet. And so I think all the symbolism of those kinds of things that remind us that we're here, yes, to dwell together in unity and in brotherhood and in fellowship, which so often evades us. And so I think that's a great example. But I think the reminder of just a temporary, we're sojourners, right? We're wayfarers. We're on our way home. And so that's a reminder of everything. And I think even back to, to Moses' time, and where all of these things were initial, from the beginning. I think it's just such beautiful symbolism and something to sit with, especially at that time of the year, and find all the allegories, all the analogies, all the deeper meaning.
Yes.
Just sitting outside of my sukkah.
Right. To make it more meaningful.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. This is our earth is our temporary home. It's right. Like, it's the pause button in between everything.
That's right. The dash. Absolutely.
The dash. Yes.
Yeah.
The dash.
Now, I do have a funny story about me being in school. So when I went to school with all of my friends, I went to, with all of my Jewish friends, are like, you can come to my house after, but I'm being bat mitzvah, I'm being bar mitzvah, so I have to go to Hebrew school first. But just come with me. I'm like, oh, okay.
You would go?
I would go. And when I would get there, the teacher's like, well, you're here. Here's a notebook. Here's a pencil. I'll look back. Gimel Dalet Hey. I'm like writing everything down.
Awesome.
And then, of course, later when I went to Israel, Hebrew just came so quickly. But at that particular time, I remember 8th grade being in school on Yom Kippur, and my teacher walking in, my geography teacher walks into the classroom, and she's like, Donna Gillenardo. That was my maiden name.
Why are you here?
What are you doing here? It's Yom Kippur. You're not supposed to be here. I said, this is Martz. We're Italian. Like, she
Did you not tell that from my last name?
Right.
But all the other Jewish kids were gone for
right.
the atonement. So she's like, why are you sitting in my class?
Why are you here?
That's hilarious.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And so it's
you're Jewish in your heart.
Right. It's interesting how God sets things up like glimpses of what's coming. Who would know that I would then go and live in Israel, and I can read Hebrew to this day, And yes. And it's so interesting because those origins, I was 13 years old, And that
Sure.
was kind of a little breadcrumb of where I was going. And I think that's what God does for us, to bless
Mm,
us and encourage us
yeah,
while we're on this sojourn. I think that happens so readily for us.
that's so beautiful, Donna.
Mm,
Gives me a lot to think about. I can't, at the moment, I can't think of anything else to ask you. I'm just so
that's
grateful
okay.
for
Mm,
everything,
yeah.
who you are, what you mean to me.
Aw,
I really
thank you so much.
appreciate.
This has been such a good, like a good touch point. Also needed that.